Hello and welcome to Pock and Rob. In today's video I am going to be creating my worst Beatle album. This is an idea that has been borrowed or shamelessly stolen from a video I watched earlier this week done by Vinyl Rewind, who had nicked the idea from someone else. It's just too delicious an idea not to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and pick my least favourite track from each of the Beatles studio albums. On the video I watched, he only considered self-penned material, but I'm actually going to consider the cover versions as well. And for that reason, there's actually going to be two versions of this that I'm going to compile as I go along. Before I dive in, I'll just remind you to like the video, hit the bell to receive notifications of future content, but most importantly, if you haven't already, join our growing army of subscribers by hitting the subscribe button. So let's go in with the debut studio album, which is Please Please Me, and my pick off that is Anna Go to Him, a cover version. I don't particularly care for it. I don't think it's particularly sung well. If anything typifies the fact that the majority of this album was recorded in a day, it's Anna. However, if I was applying that restriction of self-pen material, then I'm afraid it's going to have to be There's a Place. I prefer Misery to that, which is the other one that's often cited as not a great song, but There's a Place I just think is a bit pedestrian. Moving on to With the Beatles, and like Please Please Me, 6 of the tracks are cover versions. However, I think every single one of them earns its place, and I think the covers on here are fantastic. So for both of the lists, it's going to be Hold Me Tight. It's an early Paul dud. Not a great song. The next album, Hard Day's Night, was a difficult choice because actually all 13 tracks are really, really fine. And it lays claim to being a perfect album. There's no bad track on here. However, there has to be something that I like the least. And in this case, it's You Can't Do That. Moving on to Beatles for Sale. And we return to the formula of 8 originals, 6 covers. And one of them is garbage. It's Mr. Moonlight. I can't stand it, and it often ends up at the bottom of the list of songs that the Beatles recorded. Almost all of the self-pen material on Beatles for Sale is better than the covers. However, the only one that perhaps isn't is I Don't Want to Spoil the Party. Moving on to Help, and for me, Help is a perfect album. Even the 2 cover versions on here I think are absolutely great, and I wouldn't be without them, especially when you think that the 2 songs that they had lined up and were ditched in favour of these were If You've Got Troubles, and that means a lot. And if you've heard Anthology 2, you'll know that both of them are clunkers. So they made the right decisions with this album. Act Naturally is probably the weaker of the 2 cover versions and therefore the weakest track on the album, but I enjoy it a huge amount. It's got a great Ringo vocal. But if I have to pick a self-penned track from Help, it would have to be I Need You. It's a good song. It's just overshadowed by its company. Moving on to Rubber Soul, which is a terrific album. It does, however, have one awful track on it. One that I wish had never been recorded, and funny enough, so did John himself. It's Run For Your Life. It's misogynistic. It's all wrong, and easily the worst track on the whole of Rubber Soul. Move on to Revolver, and there's a couple of tracks I'm not fond of. Yellow Submarine gets a fair amount of flack, but for me, sorry George again, love you too. I don't like it. On to Sgt. Pepper, and Within You and Without You. Sorry, I don't like it. I never have. If there's a thread here, it may be that I don't particularly like the Indian instrumentation that he brings in. That's just a personal preference, but with both Love You Too and then Within You and Without You, there is a trend, isn't there? Moving on to Magical Mystery Tour, and it would have to be Flying. It's perfectly fine, but it's inconsequential. Moving on to the White Album, and I'll be picking 2 because there are 2 discs. So from disc 1, Wild Honey Pie. Like Flying, it's a minute's worth of inconsequential doggerel, and who needs it? Disc 2, there is only one contender, comfortably the worst thing committed to the vinyl catalogue of the Beatles, Revolution 9. No thank you. Now we hit the Yellow Submarine album, and this is the first album for a while where there is a consideration of self-penned versus non-self-penned, and the worst track on here for me is Sea of Holes. So this is from side 2, which is the George Martin orchestration. It's not a Beatle track. Simple as. If I have to pick a Beatle track, then it's going to be Only a Northern Song. Now, this was originally recorded in the Sgt. Pepper sessions, which says to me George wasn't having a great 1967 in terms of songwriting, because I don't like Only a Northern Song, and I really don't like Within You Without You. Now we reach my favourite Beatle album, which is Abbey Road. However, I don't think Abbey Road is perfect, because I don't care for I Want You, She's So Heavy, and I never have liked it. If this wasn't on the album, it would be perfect. And so it's easily my pick for the worst track on Abbey Road. And finally, we reach Let It Be. And for that, I could consider Maggie May, but I think Maggie May's kind of fun. Pointless, but fun. What isn't fun is its, for me, sister track of 1 minute of nonsense, and that's Dig It. I prefer Let It Be Naked, which loses both of them. And I did consider Across the Universe, a song that I think is, well, rubbish. But Dig It takes the cake. So, appearing here and here are my two listings of the worst possible Beatles album from their careers. One is slightly worse than the other, and I do think it's the one that includes the non-self-penned material. So now we need the sweetness to balance the bitter pill that we've just swallowed, and I have created my perfect Beatles album, picking the best track from each of their studio records. Kicking off with Please Please Me, I picked the opener. I saw her standing there. I think it would be an absolutely perfect opener for this record too. It was the perfect opener to their album career. It's a great song. The next track is All My Loving from With the Beatles. I think that's a beautiful song. I think it stands out as a great upbeat love song. From Hard Day's Night, which was very much John's tour de force, I actually picked Things We Said Today, which I think is the buried gem on this record. And from Beatles for Sale, it was almost no reply, but I ended up with I'll Follow the Sun. So I have to admit, I am a big Paul McCartney fan, and the fact that the first 4 albums, my favourite track on each one is a Paul song, probably reflects that. But when we get to Help, this is John's first track for me, and it's You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. John does Dylan, and it's brilliant. We stay with John for the Rubber Soul track I picked, which is In My Life. This is in my top 20 songs of all time. So whilst I'm a big Paul fan, I do think the best tracks on Rubber Soul are John's. On to Revolver, and we're back with Paul again, I'm afraid, and it's For No One. This is a sublime ballad, absolutely beautiful. And on Sgt. Pepper, a contender for my all-time favourite song. Both of them are involved. It's A Day in the Life. Although I have to admit, it's more of a John piece than it is a Paul piece. But A Day in the Life is far and away my favourite thing off the whole of Sgt. Pepper. Moving on to Magical Mystery Tour, and this is a difficult choice. It would be Penny Lane if I considered Magical Mystery Tour to be the real album. But of course, it's the EPs plus the single releases from 1967. And so to stay true to the spirit of Magical Mystery Tour, it's actually I Am the Walrus. Disc 1 of the White Album, and I can only pick Blackbird. Again, in my top 100 songs of all time. Disc 2 is a much harder proposition because I do think the majority of the heavy lifting on the White Album is done by Disc 1. And if you go back and click on the link, you can watch my fantasy single disc version of the White Album, the majority comes from disc 1. But from disc 2, I picked Savoy Truffle. Yellow Submarine, and this time round, it has to be Hey Bulldog. It's the only thing on the whole of the Yellow Submarine album that would even make it remotely worth owning. I own the Mono Masters CD box set, so I see no reason to ever own the Yellow Submarine album as released. On to Abbey Road, and another contender for my all-time favourite song, Something. Perfect song, perfect playing. George's best song, George's best vocal from his entire career. Something is fantastic. And we conclude with Let It Be and the title track. It has to be Let It Be. So here you'll be seeing the actual final run through of those tracks. In each case, I have made a Spotify playlist for all 3 of these running orders. They all come in around 41 to 45 minutes, so they're actually album length. As you might be able to tell from my voice, I'm not sounding too great. I am currently COVID positive. I seriously thought about not doing a video this week or doing something really short. But this idea, as a result of being off sick and watching YouTube on the telly, too good to pass up. Let me know in the comments below your worst possible Beatles album using the same criteria. And while you're at it, tell me what your best is. I'll be back in a week with another video. It will be my son and I doing 70 through to 61 of our top 100 songs of all time. Once again, remind you to like the video, hit the subscribe button, and click the bell for notifications. And I'll see you in a week.